Hey, we have some exciting news to share. We have written a book, Polarity, Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and it is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Just search for the title of our book, Polarity, Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and pre-order your copy today. As listeners of our podcast, you know we have been using the principles of a polarity mindset, healthy relationships, and meaningful dialogue as leaders for decades. And as business partners, these principles are the cornerstone of our business. Polarities are all around us, even in us, and if you can't recognize them and don't know how to leverage them, they will haunt you. They will keep showing up as persistent problems you are unable to solve. For us, having this knowledge compels us to share it with leaders around the world. We believe the polarization in our homes, schools, communities, and world would shift if every leader became polarity intelligent. We can't wait for you to read our book. Pre-order your copy of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership on Amazon.com now.
This is the True Leader Podcast, formerly known as Healthcare's Missing Logic Podcast. Today we talk about the polarity of intuition and logic and why every leader needs to leverage both for effective decision making. Don't miss it. Welcome to the True Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christofferson.
And I'm Michelle Trosett.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started.
Well, welcome to the True Leader Podcast. We're your hosts, Tracy
and Michelle.
And we're, again, happy to be here with you. We love being here in the podcast studio, talking to you. Talking to you. And this is one of our favorite topics today.
It is.
Michelle, look at her. She's just like so excited.
I really
She can hardly hold herself still.
Do you feel the energy?
She's like so excited to talk about this topic. And we just had a really great experience with this not too long ago with our Breakthrough Your Mastermind group in Colorado.
Yes.
And this was really the theme of our 3-day retreat with them.
It was. Mm-hmm. Should we tell them what it is?
Sure.
So it's logic and intuition.
Yes. And I'm surprised you put logic first.
Well,
her preference is intuition.
Mine's intuition. Exactly. I mean, hers is logic. In fact, as we were working with our mastermind group, we actually had them do a map on logic and intuition where they walked the experience, let's just say, of both.
Of balancing both.
The
both. Benefits of both.
And in preparation for that, Tracy and I sat down. We said, well, let's just do a map in preparation because it's always good to think through it, to feel through it. And it was really easy because she's really logical and I'm real intuitive.
Yeah. So we really just kind of establish what the positive when we map it, it's establishing what the positive outcomes are of both.
Yes.
And then what the consequences are when you over exaggerate or overemphasize one of those and you neglect the other. And there's always negative consequences, but when you kind of map it out and put it out there, it kind of makes it real and concrete and actionable.
Yeah.
And it just really helps get out of your head and get things onto paper, right? So it becomes more real to you. Mm-hmm. And it's a very powerful experience to go through.
Yeah.
And we had a number of different leaders from different areas and different areas of focus as leaders. And so it was a really good, just a robust conversation, and it was really thought-provoking.
Yeah, and I think it sparked in us how much we needed to run our business and in the work that we do. Like, it's kind of like it was an experience. Like, we always knew it was important, but whenever you have an experience, it like kind of renews it. Like,
Sure.
Let's apply this more to what we're doing. And so we'll share some of that with you. And as you listen to this too, just, before we even get started, think about, what do I tend to be more? Do I tend to lean more into being logical, or do I tend to lean more into my intuition? And the reason that's so important is because it all comes down to decision making.
Yeah. And
so we're going to walk through that.
Yeah. We are. Decision making using logic and intuition is the topic of the day.
It is. It is. So
here we go.
Well, think about how many decisions we make.
Oh,
as leaders, we make decisions
every day,
right? And so it's an essential component of life, in our leadership roles, and also in business. And it doesn't matter if you're a small business owner, if you run a big enterprise, if you're an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur, you are making decisions all the time. So it's really important that we have both of these attributes. And decision making, it can be challenging and complex. So that's another reason why it's important. And these are really uncertain times. Sometimes there's not a logical answer, right? Mm-hmm. We're living in a lot of ambiguity. Say that again, Michelle.
Ambiguity.
Very ambiguity. Good. A lot of uncertainty. So it does require some new ways of thinking and new decision-making processes. And even if, like I said earlier, it may not be new, it's good to unearth them again, to really look at it, how it can be applied today.
Well, and I think too, we're facing challenges we've never faced before.
Exactly.
So there are no roadmaps.
Yeah.
There's no roads where we're going. Which makes it a little more challenging to only use logic, because you don't have a roadmap. You don't have a previous experience with it.
Uncharted territories.
Yeah, exactly.
Uncharted paths.
Yes.
So by balancing both, it really helps increase flexibility, adaptability, and resilience, and increasing ability to respond to situations and challenges effectively.
Yes, for sure. So, as Michelle alluded to, really got us thinking about how we are using this in our business, or how we could use it more. And I think that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today, is just awareness. And so in our business as entrepreneurs, we're building new products often, new courses or programs, and we're marketing those. Like, we're sending out our, messages around what they are, inviting people to join them. And, we want to know what the performance of that is. Like, how effective is our messaging?
Yes.
How effective are we being in getting the message out there that we have programs for different types of people? And so we tend to go to the metrics, or to the numbers, and use logic, because our mantra is numbers don't lie, right? Numbers tell you the truth when it comes to performance. And what it does is it prevents us from being emotional and interpreting something from a state of emotion, right? Or making a false interpretation of the data. So when we use the data to say what is the performance, then we have to lean into what's next. Do we need to make a change? Do we stay the course? What's our next step in the process based on that performance? And some of that, it has to come back to what have we heard? What are the leaders we're working with saying to us? What are we learning? And then just kind of going into what in our gut, or what is in our intuition, is the right next step for us, right next step for the people that we serve. And so oftentimes there's not a roadmap. It's not been done before.
Yep,
so we have to lean into the intuition. So we leverage both, right? We take a calculated risk, leveraging the data and what we know, like kind of that deep-seated knowing about the people that we serve and the experiences that they're looking for. And oftentimes we'll just, whatever feels right
Mm-hmm,
to us, that's what we'll
Yeah.
do. I think too, as leaders, when you think about this, you use intuition oftentimes in working with teams, right? Like just kind of sensing what the energy is, if something's off or, something's not right in a team. Also in networking.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes too, right? And when you're
Yes.
meeting new people or you're networking or you have an inclination to reach out to somebody that you've met in the past, or when you meet somebody you think, oh, they're going to be important to me in the future. You just kind of have a sense of knowing. And I think even for us and working with people outside of our company, when we meet people and we're talking about potential partnerships, it's really, what's our feeling about them? Do they feel trustworthy? Like, what's our initial, inkling around the energy with them and kind of what kind of experience we think we're going to have with them before we even dive deep into details around it, right?
Happens to me all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I really relate to that because you just know, like, and even if you don't know how, you're just like, we're going to work with that person someday.
Yeah. Yeah. She's really good at picking up the ones we can work with, which is great for us. And then from an individual perspective, okay, you're using your intuition a lot. Like you use to buy a car, like,
Oh, yeah.
this is the right fit. It feels good, right? You might get all the details and all the data on the mileage and gas consumption, all that stuff. But for, usually it's kind of like, oh, this feels really good, right? Another thing might be to evaluating a job. Maybe you've been, or somebody that's, that you're interviewing for a position as a leader. You just get a gut feeling they're not going to be a good fit with the team, or right, there's just something off. Though that's how your intuition can come into that too. No matter how good their resume is, it just might not be the right feeling, right? The right sense. Picking a meal. How many times you've been to a new restaurant and you're kind of like, like just kind of following your instincts around, oh gosh, it's just really going to taste good, right? Like you just know. Or a book, like, oh, I got to read that book, right? Like just from the title of it. Or how to dress for the day.
Oh, yeah. You got to feel that one out.
Oh, you definitely got to feel it. Now, I don't when we're doing podcasts because Michelle tells me what to wear. But yes, you want to do that. And our friend Alma taught us all about how to use our intuition.
Yes.
Pick our wardrobe for the day.
So lots of different ways you can
tons.
tap into this stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of different ways, right? And it's, it's when to use these approaches and at what times that really helps balance them, right?
Yes.
So it helps balance them towards that greater purpose. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And to have a holistic approach, a balanced approach to that decision making again, so that it's harmonious. It's a harmonious approach. You're not gonna be blindsided because you didn't consider both, because they're equally important. And you can apply it to problem solving anytime you need to make an informed choice by, tapping that inner wisdom, which is really, really important. And everyone experiences this. No one can get away from this. We all make decisions. Everyone experiences it at a personal level, at a professional level. And again, professionally, as we noted in the beginning, it doesn't matter what kind of leader you are. Leadership role in an organization, small business owner, entrepreneur, it's all the same. And each of these, they have different qualities and attributes that really contribute to the decision-making process. So now we're gonna walk through what those attributes are when it comes to how they are involved with making decisions.
Yeah. And, I think the thing here too is what you want to understand is this is subconscious.
Oh, yeah.
This is the subconscious. Your intuition really comes from your unconscious or your subconscious. It's instinctive. It's an instinctive knowing. And it goes beyond reasoning. It goes, beyond rational, logical thought. And it's really kind of a subtle force to guide you, sometimes stronger than at other times. You'll feel it. And it operates really kind of outside of those bounds, I said, like of logic. It's based on past experiences. And really a lot of this is what's been stored over the years of your experiences. And the subconscious kind of files all that stuff away. It keeps track of all the different kinds of experiences that you had, what the meaning behind those experiences were, the emotions it elicited, whether it was a good feeling or a bad feeling, right? All those things are filed away in this incredible brain that we have. It's just really amazing. And it holds on to it so that it can leverage it at different times in your life and in different situations. And, that's why, and then it uses your senses as well. So sometimes people will say, I got a gut feeling about this, right? So they feel it actually in their stomach. Some people will feel it in their chest, right? Their chest will get really tight, or it'll open up, like just feel this openness, right, in your chest. It can just, you might say, I had an inner voice, so you might hear it in your mind, right? Like this voice told me, or I heard it. I heard the words, or I heard something like, oh, watch out, right? Like, and another one might be that kind of just that sixth sense. Like I just had the sixth sense that something isn't right here, right?
Yeah.
Something's wrong, right? And you can just kind of tell. So those are some ways that it can kind of be expressed by different people because they may sense it differently or feel it differently. It's not the same for everybody. It's different, for different people. And the process really is a subconscious portion of your brain picks up on these different subtle cues and signals in the environment, in the interaction, or in whatever it is that you're experiencing or asking. And it looks for the patterns from the past. So it's going back into that filing cabinet, so to speak, right? And it's really looking back in the files, and it's drawing from your memory and connecting what you have in your memory to what you're feeling and experiencing in the moment to kind of help give you that response, that answer to the question, or that response to what you're asking. So it goes way back, and we don't control it. This is not something that you can control. It just is there for you. And I always, I like to say, if you ask it, it will show you.
Oh yeah,
right.
I say that all the time too. Yep.
If you ask, then you will receive.
Yeah.
But you have to be in a space to receive it. So you have to be open to it sharing with you what you need, right? And a lot of times, and examples too that we've experienced this in the hospital setting because we're healthcare clinicians. But there'll be times where patients would seem to be okay, like the numbers all looked all right, but you just knew in your gut they were headed for a crash and soon, right?
Yeah.
Like you just looked at them, and it was something from all the patients you cared for over all the years and the experiences that was saying, warning, something's not right here. And it would prompt us to call the physician, and say, hey, this is what we're seeing, but this is what we're feeling. Like there's just something's about to happen, right? And just kind of be that high alert.
Yeah. You can't even explain it. You just feel it. You just know it.
You just know it. Yeah. You just knew it. Yep.
Yeah, so the logical side of this, there's a lot of positive attributes about being logical too, and that really is when you give a systematic or rational process making sense of the world and experience. So you really look at it through a logical lens. What makes sense? You rely on the data, the evidence, the analysis of that data, so that you can draw conclusions. It's putting that logical lens on. It's more of a structured approach, I guess, right? Yeah. You really base it on the past as well, but there's been evidence. We've already seen it. It's been proven. We can experience it. And it really helps you to develop your critical thinking skills because it's more not just looking at the data, it's going through that analysis and coming up with a logical conclusion. So they're both needed. They both have strengths. It's not an either or, it's an and in both. And we just wanted to call out a couple of quotes of other really smart people that have discovered this.
Besides us.
We'd like you to think that, we just are the ones that have declared this into reality. But Albert Einstein, now think about, he's a mathematical genius, right? What that man has contributed to our world is unbelievable. Yeah. But he also said, the only real valuable thing is intuition. Now, why would Albert Einstein say that?
Because he experienced it.
Because he experienced it, that's right. And he said, there is no logical way to the discovery of these elemental laws that he discovered. There is only the way of intuition, which is helped by feeling for the order lying behind the appearance. So you need both, right?
Yeah.
And then the other person who really brought this to the forefront later than Einstein did, much later.
much later.
Much later. He was alive in our era.
Yeah.
Is John Nesbitt. Now, John Nesbitt, he was an executive at IBM, Eastman Kodak. He's written several books. Megatrends, which was one of my favorites. Love that book, Reinventing the Corporation. And he says, intuition becomes increasingly valuable in the new information society precisely because there is so much data, right? So we cannot lose that part of us when we're in information overload.
Right.
So he really brought that paradox, many years ago with his book Megatrends.
Yeah. Well, because the more data there is, the more inclined you are to do that.
Yes.
Right. So you can't get overemphasized on that.
Yeah.
And that just brings us to the point with the reason this is a challenge is because this is a polarity. This is a both and polarity. It's an interdependent relationship between intuition and logic. When we have a polarity, we know both poles are equally important. One is not more important than the other. It's not an either or. It has to be a both and because they're bound together energetically. And so you cannot separate them. You can't choose one without experiencing negative consequences. And, if you want the optimal results, you want the very best, considered decision, then it's essential to use both. Now, there are times where intuition is going to serve you better because you don't have data. Then you've really got to kind of go with your gut, right? And just like there'll be other times where you're going to lean more heavily into the data. It just depends on the situation that you're facing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you need both throughout your decision-making, in your decision-making arsenal, I guess is what I would want to say, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to end up with negative consequences by overemphasizing one and neglecting the other. And, individuals that have a heavy favor or preference for one will overemphasize that. And then there will be a consequence over time. Ultimately, they'll fail, right? And it's what's beneath what's apparent to you.
Yes.
Right? What we can see in the 3D world, like Einstein said, right? It's what's behind that. It's the feeling, it's the essence of what's behind what you can actually see, what's in front of you. So that's, really why to lean into that a little bit more. You got to have the both.
You do. And, everyone has preference poles. Some people are more familiar and comfortable with logical decision making. And what happens if you lean too much into that, you can miss key indicators that could positively influence your decision making. You can experience this as tension between the two approaches or tensions between individuals that prefer the two approaches.
Well, it's a reality.
It's a reality.
Yep.
It's a reality. When you have one person saying the data is clear, this is what we should do, and you have another person that says, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it.
My gut's telling me that's not the way to go.
It's not the way to go. But let's kind of walk through what can happen when you really exercise the positive attributes of both. So the intuition side, it's really helpful in moments of uncertainty. You can have all the data you want sometimes, but when you're still uncertain or there is uncertainty within you, then lean into that intuition. And it can overcome complexities. You just know there's wisdom there. It's just finding a way to tap into it and that there is an internal knowing, and just know that. The more you practice it, the more that you know it's there, and it can help you do a quick assessment, and the solution that eludes the logic. You can just hone into it, and also it taps creativity and innovation. So I also think about Einstein too, that he really taught a lot about imagination, right? So how you tap into this is silence. It's going within is how you really tap into intuition.
Yeah. especially when you're learning it, right?
Yes.
When you're really learning to lean into it.
Yes.
You want to really have that centered, quiet place that you're going to get the truth, because you can have chatter that is not the truth.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the positive attributes of logic, well, it's objective, right? It's objective based.
Yep.
Like I said, you say numbers don't lie, right? Like there's objection to that. It's objective, so you don't have the subjective influence on it. The other is it's evidence based, right? So, it's kind of the science behind the decision, if you want to think about it that way. There's other elements that say when the data says this, then this is what it means, because there's been experience with it built up over time. So there's a history with it. And then it avoids the biases and errors. So, when we are interpreting the data from an emotional state or from a preference state, that can sway. It's a big bias and can sway the decision, may not be the best decision to make if you're using data, but you're also interpreting it in a way that has an emotional attachment to it, right?
Yep. Right.
And it's reality based. So logic, it's really about what's in front of you, what's right in your face, what is your experience of reality today in this kind of 3D world that we live in, and how that informs you. Now, there's some risks of using intuition if you're not skilled at it. So we all have intuition, but not all of us have honed the skill to tap into it, to really understand how we get our intuitive nudges, to know what it is and when we are experiencing it. And so, we can think we're using our intuition and really be using an interpretation based on a story we may have made up in our mind about what's happening or not happening. So it really is about, if you want to leverage both of these, as Michelle alluded to, it's about going in and intentionally uncovering where it is, where it shows up for you, how it shows up for you, and what you experience. So you really want to hone that, that experience.
Yeah, you do. Hone it.
So on to the action steps.
This is how
we wrap
this
up.
is how we help to hone it.
Yep.
We take action,
We
right?
take action. So
here's some action steps for you. So integrate both into your daily decision making. Just be mindful of both logic and intuition.
Yeah.
And become self-aware. What kind of what am I leaning into to make this decision? Is it intuition and really leveraging those intuitive feelings? And am I also bringing rational thoughts to this decision? And where has each served you well? So become very self-aware of your own application of this. And then embrace your intuition. So it's like Tracy said, you have to hone the skill, you have to develop it. And so an action step is think about that. How do you do that? How can you get better so that you can trust your instincts? And journaling and meditation is a method to help you do that and to help increase your awareness. And just in the last 6 months, I started an intuition journal. I don't use it every day, but when I have to make a decision, I ask the question, I sit, I just listen to what comes up for me. It might be an image, it might be words, it might be something, but I am really learning how to tap into that more and more. So that's another action step that you can take, is actually journaling and meditating and asking questions so you can hear your intuitive voice.
Yeah. And you may also need to strengthen your logical side of things too, right? Your logical decision making. So gather relevant information and data. Like, what data do I need?
Yep.
And what is it going to tell me, right? Be clear on what that data is actually telling you from that objective perspective. So that you can kind of weigh out the pros and cons, right, so to speak. Use mindful reflection to tap into your intuition and analyze your thoughts. So again, it's just back to that exploring. So here's what the data tells me, but then what is it that I'm feeling about that? Like, what is my intuition telling me? Is it in alignment with what the data is saying, or do I know something else that isn't present here? So again, just in knowing what your preferences are. lean into understanding, what do I prefer? Do I prefer to use logic or not? So those are our action steps for today, and we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Just another incredible episode of the True Leader Podcast. We're glad you were here for it. And thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you. And if you enjoyed this, share it with others. Spread the word. We love that. And leave us a review. And then if you'd like to make sure you don't miss an episode, make sure you subscribe at wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want to see us on video, because we're quite the sight to see, you got to know, then you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. So until next time, stay safe and stay healthy and take care.
See you next time.